The Visual Cast is a hybrid podcast where we sit down with some of the best, most interesting, and most exciting visual artists from all over the world. We chat about life, art, visuals, software, hardware, systems, crystals, alien downloads, spirituality, and catalysts. It's essentially a massive nerd out. But the guests also do a set where we dive into their computer and get an up-and-close look at how they make art, how they perform art, or really anything they want to share with us. I really hope you guys enjoy this episode. To support us, please like and subscribe, follow us on Instagram, and leave us a review on Spotify. Now, without any further ado, here's the Visual Cast.
The world is like a ride at an amusement park, and it's fun for a while. Some people have been on the ride for a long time, and they begin to question, is this real, or is this just a ride? And other people have remembered, and they come back to us, and they say, hey, don't worry, don't be afraid, ever, because this is just a ride.
Welcome to the Visual Cast. Joined today by a very special guest, a good friend, and really up-and-coming and already coming VJ, Tyler Reino. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Alan.
Excellent. So I was telling Tyler before, we're trying a little bit at some new things here, so bear with us. And always, give me feedback of things if they're working or not working. That's to the audience, not to Tyler. Tyler, don't give me any feedback. You just be in it. You enjoy it.
I'm here.
So I like to start off with a scripted question, and we're going to get right into it. And after that, we'll get into more of the interview part. So, Tyler, from beautiful visuals to outstanding VJ tools, you are doing absolutely amazing things for the VJ and visual arts community. You are the technical director for the Rust Music, an amazing record label, and the visuals lead and curator for our favorite festival, Submerge. You have also played some massive festivals all across the US, and you are also a featured artist on the Synesthesia marketplace and a partner in Nero Studio. So to start things off, what does curating a visual lineup entail, and how good does it feel to see your work come to fruition?
That's a great question. So I guess I'll say, this year was my second year being the visual coordinator for Submersion, and a big part of that is really trying to bring different things to the table for this, niche kind of music scene that I find myself that I'm involved in. Really trying to bring fresh things to the table, things that people haven't ever seen before, and, making that work with the VJs themselves too. And especially, trying to make sure that, they're into it as well so that you can create that kind of synergy, in the moment.
Nice. Yeah, that's really awesome. And it's felt, I got to have the honor of coming to a Submersion last year. Wasn't a great memory in my mind just because of the date and everything. And I've already spoken about it a bunch of times in the podcast, so I don't feel like I need to talk about it again. But being in the festival and having all the people around was very helpful. And your attention to detail and matching of the kind of people in the festival was really felt. And just your excitement and kind of like, the way that you brought everybody together was just great. And it's a great festival, it's a really nice festival.
Yeah, man. I really appreciate that. Like last year, was my first time working in that kind of level of capacity with that festival. So it was a big learning experience for me, especially last year. And I know you weren't there this year, but this year I felt especially more prepared and, making sure the VJs have everything that they need to get the job done. And I just absolutely love Submersion. It feels like a really great, culmination of a lot of people who were, attendees so many years ago and got inspired by the scene and, just started to be a part of it and actually make things happen. So it's really special to, be a part of that, especially for me. I don't do this, full time at all. I work in IT full time. So doing this kind of stuff a few times a year really creates those impactful moments in my life.
Nice. What do you do in IT?
So I am a service desk manager for an MSP. So basically, all these medium, small sized companies that don't want to hire their own in-house IT will come to us, and we'll sell our services to them, whether it's support, server backups, all that kind of stuff. It's exhausting.
Not as fun as slinging visuals at a festival, I guess.
Not as fun as slinging visuals, but it pays the bills, and it allows me for to be to be able to not take visual gigs on as a means for me to feed myself, but as a means for me to apply
Express,
myself as an artist
yeah,
and
express yourself,
express,
and
and
yeah,
and only take the meaningful events that I feel like I'm gonna have an impact on it, and where it's not like I'm just doing it because I need the paycheck.
right, right. That's awesome. That's awesome. I think that's like a, it's not like good or bad. It's just unique. I think a lot of people want to become a full-time artist, and that entails like taking the
Right.
gigs that they don't want to do. Maybe there's some merit in that and some benefit in it in different aspects of things, but I think that if you're kind of not interested in blowing up, right, and you're just interested in like doing your craft and you know doing it the way that you want to do it and learning it the way that you want to do it, then that's like a really good way of approaching it, of like, I'm going to take the things that are exciting to me and that I'm going to apply myself really well out, instead of like, I'm going to take whatever comes at me, which again, it's not bad or good, it's just like a different kind of
Right.
approach. So yeah, I think it's a pretty unique experience, and I think it's going to allow you, and it already has, in kind of like the output that you've been doing, and I'm going to show a little bit here, kind of your Instagram here, of like just like some of the work that you've been doing recently. The way that it allows you to kind of showcase your skills in a way that you're comfortable with, that the event is right for it, I think is very powerful. You do a lot of real-time visuals. I guess you do all real-time visuals. And
Yeah, pretty much, like, when I'm running sets, it's primarily like 99% synesthesia, where I may have some clips in, Resolume where I have loaded up that sends to synesthesia, then back to Resolume, and
mhm,
then using Resolume for, its advanced output. But I really use a lot of real time. It's mostly synesthesia. Whether it's scenes that I've created, marketplace scenes, built-in scenes, or shaders that I found from Shader Toy, where their license
converted them.
allows for me to use it in a commercial setting. I look for those pretty heavily too. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, I really try pretty hard with trying to make a visual feel impactful in a few different ways. Um, and I'm sure we'll get into it in a bit here, but like
Yeah, of
with the
course.
TouchOSC controller that I've made, um, I've really tried to make VJing with synesthesia feel instrumental.
Mm. Which, if anybody is interested in synesthesia, definitely check out our episode that we had with Theron, the creator of synesthesia. A lot of what he was trying to do when he created synesthesia was really make an instrument, was make an extension of an instrument for, for that, so that originally he actually made it for musicians and realized that was not a good idea. But, that was kind of the ethos, was how do we make an instrument for VJs that they can kind of like utilize in that kind of fashion. So I think you adding to that mix with your Touch OSC patch, which we're definitely going to look at in the set portion, is instrumental, I think, to that kind of doing it. And yeah, I mean, again, it's like, you know, maybe you would have been able to do the same thing that you're doing, and create a beautiful curation of nice visuals if you would have taken every gig. But it seems to me like you're kind of honing in on a style and kind of like a an aesthetic that is something that you like, that makes sense to you, and a lot of that is going to be because you're having the ability to take it slow, take it one by one, focus a few months on a gig, which I think is obviously you have the benefit of having a really good job that pays your bills,
Right.
so it might not be everybody's case, And definitely if like it was, do I go work at McDonald's or do I do this VJ gig? Probably better to just do that VJ gig.
Right.
So everybody has their path, but I think that for you it's been working out really well in this sense. So let's go back to to early Tyler. Did you grew up in New York? Is that right?
I did. I grew up on Long Island, New York.
Nice, Long Island. I don't know
Long
much about it.
Long Island.
Long Island.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, it has its own rep, but it was, it was great growing up there and having New York City, for me, like I grew up in Huntington, New York,
mhm,
and I had the train station to Penn Station, Manhattan, was 7 minutes from me. So, those nights where it was me in high school or something trying to like, go out to a show or whatever, drive 7 minutes to the train station, hop on the train. It's an hour train ride, and next thing you know, you're in Manhattan. So I feel like it was a really great place to grow up, to be exposed to a lot of this kind of weird subcultures.
nice. Did you go to school in New York as well?
So I went to high school in New York.
Mm-hmm.
After high school, I went to community college for like a semester and a day. I didn't really know what I wanted to do right after high school. Uh, so when that kind of like came to a halt, I was like, all right, I'm just gonna work jobs and do my thing,
Mm-hmm.
because it was just what I had to do to provide for myself. Being right out of high school and just having to do that. So I did that for a few years, and then eventually I was like, all right, I don't want to work these labor jobs
Mm-hmm.
forever or anything like that. And my friend got me onto a school on Long Island. Shout out Hunter Business School, in between LA Fitness and a Best Buy in Levittown, New York. It was great, great school. I was in and out in like an 8 month period, and it pretty much laid down the foundation for what you need to become an IT technician.
Mm.
So, kind of just showing you all of like the routes you can take, whether it's Windows, Mac OS, or security, and
Mm-hmm.
even electronics. Getting into logic gates and stuff like that. They
Interesting.
give you kind of a pretty good a foundation of what you can do, and branch off from there.
Mm-hmm.
So from that, I went into IT support, and have been doing that ever since. It's been about 7-8 years going into that,
Wow.
which is actually great because a lot of that troubleshooting experience. Even though I was supporting dentists and things like that, a lot of that troubleshooting method, and trying to think outside of the box is translated to being a technician in the VJ field, where
For sure.
I'm VJ1 at Submersion, and have to get through technical problems. So really learning that troubleshooting process has definitely translated very well to the VJ world, to the capacity that I've been involved in so far.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, troubleshooting and being able to work on issues in front of house is such an important skill that I think that many, if not most, VJs overlook. I think it's obviously a big difference between the US VJs and the European VJs, just because of the natural
Yeah.
things of like most people here are coming in and just plugging into an LED wall. The technical problems are limited, and usually there's an LED technician to kind of deal with it. Whereas like 99% of visuals in the rest of the world, or I shouldn't say the rest of the world, but let's say like in the electronic scene, is like projection mapping. So there's a lot more of like a harder kind of like curve to like be able to figure things out. It's not just like turn on the
Right.
projector. You have to map it. You have to figure out like your outputs, resolution. There's a lot of different things involved. Um, and again, there are some, like modem's a good example, where it's like you kind of just get a pixel map. You don't have to deal with any of the other problems, but that's very
Right.
specific. Most festivals, you're kind of on your own. You have to kind of figure it out. So yeah, I think that there's a big merit to being able to understand problem solving, and understanding not just how do you make pretty visuals, but how do LED panels work? How does the processor work?
Right.
Maybe not like on the level of like being able to program it, but understanding like, is my picture scaled? Is my picture, smushed or whatever? Why? Maybe the technician doesn't understand. They're not a high level, or maybe they do, but now you have the same language that you can talk to them with. So I think it's very beneficial. And then obviously having a person like yourself in the booth that can figure those things out for the people that don't know that stuff is massively beneficial. And I think it's something that's overlooked, not to shit on anybody, but there are some festivals. Well, I don't have to, the last one that I
We
was
don't have
at,
to name names.
we don't have to name names. There are some festivals that don't have any technical people, and it's like,
Right.
it's a madhouse, and some of them are huge. Some of them are the biggest ones. Obviously, the biggest one that I'm not going to name, but we know what we're talking about.
Right.
There's no technical person there, and it's like, what do you expect? And there's like 15 different VJs coming in and out, and then it's like falls on the shoulders of whoever is the head VJ that night, which is sometimes makes sense, but also at a scale of that level, at an event of that scale, there should be somebody that is just like their only job is to do this technical thing.
Right. You really need to have that person who's able to problem solve right there at front of house. Cause like, even at Submersion, I was talking with, the LEDs, and it's like, everything's pretty uniform in the LD worlds when it comes to what they're using and everything.
Right,
And when
right.
you
They're
get
using
to the
Grand MA
VJ scene,
and yep,
yeah, it's all pretty uniform. And then when you get to the VJ scene, it's like, all right, what program are you using, and what are
right.
you outputting with, and how many protocols are we juggling here? Um, so it gets to a pretty wide spectrum of different things that you're gonna face when
Yep,
you're trying to troubleshoot an issue.
yep, yep. Yeah, and yeah, that we can move on from that one for sure. I think it's important, So you grew up in New York. You kind of went to this school. Were you
Yeah.
always kind of like nerd inclined? Like, was IT kind of something that felt natural to you, playing with computers and stuff like that?
So it's funny you say that, because like I didn't really get into actual computer troubleshooting or anything until like I actually started going to that school. But
Mm-hmm.
it can my fascination with technology can go as far back to me being like 8 9 years old, and my brother having an iPod where it broke. And it's kind of a funny story. I was like, all right, this iPod's broken, I can like play with it. But what I didn't understand was my brother was trying to get a warranty on it, so I took his broken iPod and tried to open it up.
Mm-hmm.
Like a paper clip or something like that. I was just like, I want to see what's inside there. I'm very, intrigued by that. Needless to say, he did not get the warranty approval because they saw that I was trying to open up an iPod, probably Gen 1, Gen 2, with the paper clip.
That's funny.
So yeah, it goes far as back to that, as far as technology. And even, in the art world, I remember, being in second grade and like doing art class, and then like
Mm.
my art, like I always felt like I was different when it came to art, because second grade art class, I was working on something, and my teacher was like, oh, like how'd you what how can you describe that? And I was like, oh, well, I just did a whole bunch of scribbles around this side. And for whatever reason, my art teacher was like, well, no child in my class will use scribbles as a way to express their art. And I
Oh
was so
no.
confused by that, and I'm like, it's
Oh
just
no.
like, it's scribbles.
Yeah. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm just scribbling.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it's very interesting time.
it is. So, okay, so then getting into IT, was that kind of like a foray into kind of, computer human interface, and kind of like now I can use the computer as like a tool to not necessarily express yourself per se, but like as a tool to help other people and then, get money and make work. Um,
Right.
what was the kind of shift to, oh, I can use the computer to make art? Was it like when
Right.
was that
So
happening?
I guess I can kind of continue piggybacking off your last question as well. Like
Sure.
after doing art in elementary school and middle
Hmm.
school, by the time I got to high school, there was budgeting changes and whatnot, classes getting cut. I ended up taking computer graphics in high school, where it was
Oh,
like we were learning Adobe Flash. I think
okay.
CS2 or CS3 when that still existed.
Yeah.
So a lot of like my understanding of like, okay, like now I can create an image and keyframe it and
Right.
move it across the screen. That's where it all kind of started, where all right, I kind of understand how animation works and how to like export a video where things are happening, and I know how to move those things. And then later on in high school, I did a video yearbook, which was kind of like it was this few hour long movie of the senior class recreating either viral videos or coming up with their own original ideas, and then having to go around the school and film that, and then go back to the editing studio and like make a video about that. And I think I like joined that club like kind of late throughout the year. I think it was already December at that point.
Hmm.
And I think they were like behind on editing and such, and I came in and had never actually really edited a video in like Premiere. I think we used Edius at the time. And the head of the club just showed me how to like a couple keyboard shortcuts, how to cut a clip or whatever, and do that. And I think I went home with the school laptop and came back the next day with a finished skit.
Nice.
And
That's
they were like,
awesome.
"Whoa, like you finished that like last night?" I'm like, "Yeah, I did."
That's awesome.
So I really helped out a lot in that club in high school, where it was like a lot of people were making these skits and all that, and I
Hmm.
was like going in there and like helping them finish them and whatnot, and like just putting that on the actual timeline. So a lot of that, art centric type of stuff really was in high school, but to the same point in high school, like a lot of those classes were cut and everything, and by the time I got to like junior year in high school, it was like my guidance counselor was like, all right, so like you done with art at this point, are you gonna like start thinking about something a bit more serious? And I'm like, I guess so. Like I don't know what I'm doing, I'm
What kind of
16.
high school did you go to? Why are they?
Walt Whitman High School, shout out, Long Island. But like, I don't know, I just didn't have a great, guidance counselor experience
Right,
or
right, right,
whatever.
right,
And
right,
just
right,
like,
right,
I don't come from a family of artists or anything like that.
right, right, right.
Closest thing I have to that was, my grandfather, he was an audio engineer
Oh, no
in
way.
like the 60s and 70s. And,
That's
by the
awesome.
time, the digital age, came to be, he retired.
Hmm.
But a lot of, commercials and TV shows, he was, in the studio with the actors and such, having the film, dubbed over and everything, because,
Mm,
back then it was like, they weren't actually recording the audio there. It was like everything was getting dubbed over in the studio.
right.
Um, so that's like the only person in my family that's really gone down a creative route. So for me, it was like everybody was all right. Let's go for psychology, communications, and those
Hmm.
kinds of majors.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I like art. And my family's like, well, how do you make money from that? I'm like, well,
Hmm.
I don't know. Nobody in my family has done that.
Interesting. So there's not like a direct kind of inspiration or like person to emulate, but you felt inside of you that that was something that you wanted to kind of like pursue. Um,
Right.
so so
Always
so
felt
tell
artistic.
Yeah, like some sort of expression through visual art or some sort of drawing, digital kind of motion graphic, whatever. But that felt to you like a natural kind of like way to express yourself.
Right.
So how did you find yourself kind of doing that? Like, what was what kind of led you into visuals and VJing as like your expression? Because there's so many different ways you
Yeah.
could take it. Film, motion graphics, animation. I mean, there's so many
Yeah.
places.
So I could say a lot of that started from, my time in high school, going to
Hmm.
New York City, like how I mentioned before, and going to the shows. My first concert ever was like, um, sorry, I was just getting a phone call. My first concert ever was Dead Mouse with Excision in New York
Nice.
City, and it was I'd never been to something like that before. I'd never been around amplified sound before. And I remember it was Excision. It was just like straight up strobe lights. And even just that effect, I was like, what is going on here? Like everything's cut down like to 15 frames a second. It looks like, or, all the strobing is happening. And then Dead
Right.
Mouse happens and, he has the cube. And this was like 2010 at this point.
Right.
So I was really, really intrigued by all of that. And then, I continued going to shows, I guess, 10 plus years ago, 10, 12, 14 years ago at this point. It wasn't like a lot of, these small tours or whatever in New York City were having these big visual experiences, but it was still like a part of it. And it was still like a growing interest. And it probably wasn't until like I started seeing, Tipper with like Jonathan Singer, Android Jones, where I was like, okay, these visual artists are getting like credited during the event because they're
Right.
like part of the show. This is really interesting. Like they're doing this whole live visual collaboration to the music as it's happening, and it may not be a planned thing. Um, so yeah, I feel like a lot of my real interest for the visual world itself kind of started around that Tipper sphere. Yeah.
Like just kind of seeing maybe like a higher caliber, or like you said, being credited, so you have like
Right.
oh, that's that guy, oh, that's that person, kind of like being
Right.
able
Like I
to.
guess, before those, people were credited on a bill or anything, or me seeing that for the first time, I'm like, oh, like, now
This
that I
guy has
see
great
that, like, oh,
visuals or
there's,
whatever.
yeah, no, or not even that, but just like, oh, there's a lot more to the show that's just one person coming up and playing music. Like, it's a
Right.
big collaboration between, multiple teams.
Right. And a VJ, or the visual artist, is an artist, right? Like he's on the
Right.
bill. He's credited. Yeah, I think a lot of people have this kind of like moment of like, oh, it's more than just this show, right? Like a lot of people have like their one show that they saw that really blew their mind up, and because it blew their mind up, they went to find out who did the thing, right? And then they're like, oh,
Right.
there's like a whole team of people behind here. Um, so I really relate to that as well.
Yeah.
So was it kind of like was it kind of like quote unquote love at first sight for you? Like, okay, these guys are doing it at such a high level, I want to figure out how to do it, and you just kind of dove into it?
It was probably like 2015 I saw Tipper for the first time, and that was, I was like, what is this? And went to Infrasound that same year, drove all the way out to Wisconsin from New York. And then I think it was the next year they came back to New York City, and I think it was Android Jones and Datagramma for one night. And for the Datagramma
Nice.
night, they had these dancers on stage, and I specifically remember there being this like visual where it was like this Mobius rotation around the dancer as they were
Cool.
moving, and it was following them. It would move a certain direction depending on where the dancer was moving. And I was like, wow, that really is like bending my mind right now.
Nice.
So I feel like that year, like 2016 is where I really like started to get interest from that. And then shortly after that, I went back to IT school, and completed that course and everything. And towards the end of me completing that course in 2017, 2018, I was like, I want to get into visuals. And I remember like I was still in school, signed up for that Adobe educational discount, got After Effects, Photoshop, and I was starting to rip into After Effects. And then it got to a point of me being like, all right, I'm creating clips and everything, but like maybe these clips aren't working well with each other, or I don't know
Mhm.
how to make it work with each other,
Mhm.
or I'm working several hours on one thing, but it
Right.
may not even be a visual that I
Can
can use
use.
in the set.
Right.
Right. So that's when I was starting to get interested in real-time visuals, and I
Hmm.
was like, okay, well, now these things run in real time, and I can just like you know, program it to match the music and everything else that you add on is an instrumental element to
Mhm.
it.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about that. How did you kind of like get into real time visuals? you're obviously a very good GLSL coder, and you understand the intricacies of how that works. So give us a little bit of an intro into that, and where you're
Yeah,
at with it now.
so I guess a lot of that started from VJing in New York City. I live in North Carolina now since 2020, but when I got into VJing, around 2018 and such, I was swapping an HDMI cord on the side of a stage in a bar in a quote bar venue in New York City with the Void, and I remember he started using Synesthesia, and I
Mm,
was like, oh, that's so interesting. Like that, there's an audio engine where bring in a microphone and it analyzes what's going on, and then that gets applied to the shader. That's like what I've always wanted. Like my problem with pre-rendered content was like I want to control the visual in every aspect of the song and like really create those like
right.
impactful moments where you can't always do that with a pre-rendered clip.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a lot of that started, from the Void, uh, you know,
Shout out
all those
Andrew.
all those years back. Yeah, shout out Andrew. And I'm a single dad, so when all that was kind of coming to be in my life, I put creative things on hold for a while.
Hmm.
Um, so that was like early 2020. The year I had my daughter, I was like, all right, I got to figure out my life for a bit. So I stopped doing things for a couple of years, but when I came back into it, I was like, okay, I'm taking all of the clips, the really crappy clips I've made in After Effects, and I'm putting them on a hard drive, and I'm taking a Sharpie to the hard drive, and I'm writing VJ archive, and I'm putting it in a drawer, and never looking at it
I
again.
love it. I love
It's
that.
time for something new.
I love that.
Uh,
That's awesome.
so yeah, I think it was after I took a break from everything. It was the summer of 2022, and I remember being sent like a preview update for one of the the new Synesthesia updates
Hmm.
that had the it was like a whole OSC overhaul and
Mm,
everything. And I was like reading the documentation on the update and whatnot. And it was like, okay, like send out, global OSC addresses and,
hmm.
dynamically, be able to create a controller with that. And I was like,
Right.
wow, when I used Synesthesia a couple years ago, I always felt like I had the problem of MIDI mapping it to where like I can get very confused of where I am in my MIDI controller
Right.
because I
Right.
may not know exactly what I'm looking at
Hmm.
right then and there when I pull up a new scene. So with these OSC updates, I was like, wow, you can get live data. And my whole problem with trying to use synesthesia when I was trying it out was like, I don't know how to control it properly. So it's like, all right, let me create a way for me to be able to control the software before I actually start
Mm,
creating the visuals themselves.
so smart. I mean, it's like a very interesting kind of like, um, way to get into this kind of like, understanding. I'm just showing here a little bit of your TouchOSC in action, as you're talking about it. So, I mean, there's two things here, right? There's like, synesthesia is primarily GLSL. There's obviously like a huge marketplace with scenes that are already made, and it's one of those things that you can kind of jump into very easily. And then TouchOSC, kind of the same thing. There's a lot of things that you can do in TouchOSC out of the box, but the stuff that you're doing is way more advanced. So this involves like Lua, which is a type of language. So you obviously have some sort of background in IT, but IT is not necessarily computer science, and
Right.
and vice versa. So how did you learn these kind of computer languages, and what was like some sort of way for you to kind of get into it? How did you get your foot in the
Yeah.
door, as it
So
were?
it's pretty interesting because like I said before, getting sent this update summer of 2022. I don't know if many of us remember, but a couple, leading into the end of 2022, ChatGPT came out.
Yes.
And
Okay.
when ChatGPT came out, I feel like a lot of people were kind of just asking it like, one leveled questions, like give me
Right.
the answer for this one specific thing. And I was like, wait a second, I can like have a follow-up question with this thing. And like, I don't know how to program. I went to IT school to learn how to troubleshoot computers, but I wasn't writing functions or anything like that.
Mhm.
So it was like, all right, teach me Lua, Chat GPT. I don't understand this function. I like have a question. How do I do this in Lua scripting? And then I'm like, okay, you gave me an explanation, but I don't understand your explanation. Dumb it down for me because I'm not a programmer. So a lot of that, I guess that the start of me trying to get into programming was through this TouchOSC controller, where I was like adding a lot of things, like understanding TouchOSC itself. But then it got to a point where I was like, I want to add these features. How do I get it done? And it's like, you have to do scripting. And I was like, all right, it's time to get into Lua. And I even remember seeing like Lua, like, back in the day before I even got into any of this when I was a kid. Like I played a lot of World of Warcraft, and like the add-ons were built off of
Were
Lua.
they?
So
Oh
like,
wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know it goes
yeah,
back
yeah.
that
So
far.
anytime there was like
Interesting.
anytime there was like a patch update or something in World of Warcraft, they would like throw a bunch of Lua errors, and I'm like, what
Right.
is this Lua nonsense? And then next thing you know, I'm like, oh, I need to use Lua? Like, no effing way. This is from, the same
The
language
good.
that built these add-ons.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I have a similar, relationship with coding. I mean, I had a background in visual scripting for many years, and like, from Touch Designer and Touch Designer barely, maybe some, Unreal blueprinting. And then when ChatGPT came around, it was like, okay, I could take my knowledge of system understanding and engineering and translate it into like,
Right.
line coding. Um,
Right.
but I mean that door just was like wide open, and now it's even like crazier. I mean, I don't know if you've used Claude or anything, but Claude is like ridiculously smart, especially the 3.5
Haven't
one.
used
Like
Claude.
it's like ChatGPT is like a really good place to learn because it kind of like puts you in the right direction. But this 3.5 Sonnet in Claude is like, now I have like a third year PhD student, like, at my
Oh, wow.
whim. It's crazy. It's crazy. So, I feel like it's a really interesting time to like be able to, because it's one thing to just like, hey, do this thing for me. It doesn't always work. You have to know what to ask. You have to know what direction to put it in, and
Right.
like learning how
You have to
to
be able to like
prompt.
articulate the question, and
Yes.
create those prompts like you're
Yes.
saying. Because
Yeah.
like you can ask it a one-off question and get your answer, but like, do you actually understand
Yeah.
how it is explaining it to you?
Exactly.
And if you
And
don't,
then
then like
it's
you have to reformat your questions.
totally. And then it's like if you're building a tool, I'm working on a real plugin now, and it's all in C++. And like the deeper and deeper I get into it, I'm like, wait a second, I'm gonna get so far into it that I won't be able to troubleshoot people's problems. So I like kind of like slowed down a bit and like really tried to understand like what is the function. Like I'm never gonna understand the math. I'm not like math inclined. I can get functions,
Right.
but like I don't understand math on that level. But if I understand that this function does this, and like the variable is connected to the parameter, and the parameter is making a new
Right.
thing, and like kind of like the small little things inside of it, then I can troubleshoot, and then I can help people if there's a problem. And like I feel like it's very important is not only just understanding, like there's a few levels to it. You have to understand how to prompt, like what are you asking for, which is kind of like a skill I think a lot of nerds have from like forums and like searching Google of like how to figure things out. Then you
Right.
also have to understand like what is the actual function doing, and kind of like learn as you're going along. Um, and then it kind of gets into like kind of like a dual kind of thing of like how do you ask the question, and also what is the answer that you're getting? Do I understand the answer? Um, it's a crazy time to be in this field because it's like so
Yeah.
it's so what's the word, like freeing, it's so like allowing so many things to happen at once. um so okay, so you kind of like get into this. By the way, I'm really impressed that your GLSL like knowledge is from ChatGPT. Like I've tried GLSL and ChatGPT and it's still very difficult. GLSL is like a ridiculous
Yeah.
language. It
It
doesn't make any sense.
I don't understand a lot, like 90% of it, and I feel like
Dude,
I'm learning a
Theron
lot,
was
but I
saying he
I don't
doesn't
understand
understand it.
so much. Yeah, it's like I remember, like he said, it's like black magic.
Yeah.
Just like
So I'm really impressed because I
it's
thought that you maybe
crazy.
had some sort of background in that. So kudos to you. So, we're going to get to the set very soon here, but before we do, I just want to talk a little bit about your kind of involvement with synesthesia. You kind of mentioned, obviously, the TouchOSC controller. You also have some scenes in the marketplace. Can you tell us a little bit about how that happened, Kevin? Can you get out of this situation, please? Um,
He's perfectly in the shot. I love it.
yeah, being a little bit silly. Can you tell us a little bit about how you kind of got into synesthesia? How you got discovered, quote unquote, by them, and how you got into the team.
Yeah, sure. So I guess, like I said before, it goes far back as, swapping that HDMI cable with the
With
Void,
Andrew.
at
Nice.
Sunnyvale and in Brooklyn. And he's had a bit of involvement with synesthesia. So knowing him, it's definitely got my foot in the door with working with them. If you ever have emailed synesthesia support, you may have seen me respond to an email. But yeah, that's kind of how it all started. Really, was just knowing that, putting out this controller. And
Hmm.
when I put out this controller, and I was like, all right, like I'm gonna make it free to download, because like for me, when I was making it, a lot of people were like, oh, you should sell this, you should sell this. And I'm like, okay, but like I don't have anything else to really show for myself at this time, so like I'm just gonna release it for free and see what comes after that.
Mm.
And then the next thing will happen. So I did that,
Yeah.
and it was like,
Hell
wow,
yeah.
this guy like really loves the app, and he's created this tool for it. Which is like, in order to use the Touch OSC controller, you need a pro license of
Uh huh.
synesthesia, sort of like create
Interesting.
that additional I
Feature set
guess
or whatever.
incentive to
Incentive.
purchase pro.
Yeah.
It's pretty, it feels good. It feels good to add into the software to where people can just like, with my controller, it's like, once you set up the OSC connection, everything dynamically updates for you whenever you update a new scene. So it's
Yeah.
like you're ready to rip.
Yeah, it's super robust. I use TouchOS. I'm using TouchOSC right now for the podcast. To control it, and I use it
Nice.
in
Nice.
most of my sets. I mean, it's like reduced. I don't travel with an APC anymore. I travel with like just a MIDI fighter. So I have
Yeah.
some like I like tactile things, but buttons don't need to be tactile
It's
for
good to
me.
have the
Faders,
tactile, stuff.
there's a give and take. Like again, for me, buttons don't need to be tactile. X, Y coordinates. Obviously, for me, it's like the knobs because the knobs I can dance with. I can really dance with a knob,
Right.
and like turning a knob with my finger doesn't feel like it. But again, like a fader, I can dance with a fader going up and down on TouchOSC.
Right.
And the beauty of TouchOSC, is the feedback. Like this is obviously for the podcast. I have a very simple, but for my VJ stuff for Unreal, it's like all dynamic. I can switch so many things, and like you can create logic inside of your touch system,
Right.
inside of your control system, which is so important because when you're in deep into like a VJ set and you want to like do something, if you have to look for it in your node graph, you can do it, but you might get lost and you might do the wrong
Right.
thing. But if you can have the logic in a button, then it's like very powerful. And you could do that in a MIDI controller, but the feedback of what you're doing is not there. Like a light turning on does not tell me that I switched some crazy logic of like five different things. I need to have like
Right.
either something change in my UI or like a word that like lets me know what it is. So there's a lot of benefits there. I think for sure in that realm.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Like I feel like, with MIDI, I'm not a MIDI expert or anything, but it's like you're working with values from 0 to 127, and working with all that, which kind of like just translates to more audio software and such. And OSC just made so much sense to me because it was like, here's an address, here's your arguments, and you can send them back and forth to each other. I was like, this just makes perfect sense as a
Mhm.
VJ, because like, especially in synesthesia, where when you launch a new scene, you have a whole new set of controls. Whereas, in Resolume, all of your controls and everything for all your different clips may kind of be pretty consistent.
Mm-hmm.
So like MIDI mapping in Resolume like isn't an issue, but like once you get to Synesthesia and it's like, all right, now I'm on this scene. It's like how many
Right.
bangs, across from the left do I have to count to make sure that I'm on the right
It's
one
the
on
right
my
one.
MIDI
Right.
controller?
Right.
Right. So like really, I guess reducing the micro calculations was like a, a huge benefit of the
Mm-hmm.
controller for sure.
Yeah, and the dynamicness of it, I think, is really powerful as well, like you said.
Yeah. Yeah, and that
Um,
came with, that update for Synesthesia where they added global address format where it was
right.
like, everything kind of just counted in numbers and wasn't like, this button in this scene is only this address that, is specific to the scene. It's like, all right, now
Mm-hmm.
it's controls global one toggle, things like that.
Mm, interesting. Interesting. That's that's similar to Resolume's addresses as well, right? That it's like a global addressing, or is that not the same thing?
Yeah, Reslim has a pretty good like they do a good job at like, being able to understand where you're going in
Right.
OSC.
Clip slash
I feel like
one slash.
yeah, like when I was learning Touch Designer, I felt like I made more utilities than I did like actual visuals. Where I
That's
was
what it's
just like
for.
sending OSC places. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I love Touch Designer for that.
Yeah.
Like
I
I
mean,
made before the controller, I made this utility where it was like based on your clip position in Resolume, you can like send out a specific OSC message, and it used Touch Designer as a middleman. It was like,
nice.
all right, if I wanted to, trigger this clip position in Resolume, it would launch a synesthesia scene.
Oh
Um,
shit! Have you seen this? Oh, I'm gonna never remember the name, but it's like an OSC software that allows you to create like a timeline in OSC. Oh fudge! I
is it
wish I remember.
Chatain?
No, not Chatain. Chatain's
No.
great as well. Chatain's more of like a interface to like different
Yeah.
hardware and stuff. No, this is like it's like an OSC timeline tool that allows you to kind of like uh, create different types of like logic and stuff within OSC, um, and also like record things as well, like record different commands and sequences. I'm never gonna find it.
Is it like the oh man, what's it called? Do I have
It's
it?
so good.
Come on.
I posted it a bunch, but I just don't remember that. It's got one of those stupid names. Oh, here I found it. Um, wait, is it this? Yes, yes. It's called Media Control Workstation (MCW) or two. It's
Haven't heard of
wild.
that.
It's wild. It's like it's got like sequencing, so you can like set up like sequencing with
Oh wow.
OSC, and then like multi-layered, and then namespace management, so you could have like it's kind of like what we do in Touch Designer, where you're sending like the same messages into Touch Designer, and then Touch Designer you're sending it out as like a different namespace.
Right.
But inside of this whole utility, this whole program, different mapping. You would love this, dude, and it's free
Oh yeah, I
as
gotta
well.
check
So
this out.
yeah,
I'm
you'd
always
love
looking
it.
for nice new little OSC tools.
Yeah, and it has like this. It has a really nice GUI
Oh,
where
the
it's
Wizard of
like,
OSC too.
yeah. Have
I've
you
heard
heard?
of that.
You've
I've
heard of
heard of
it. You've
that.
definitely heard
Yeah.
of it. You've
Yeah,
definitely
I've
heard
heard
of
of
it.
that. Is it,
Yeah.
it's under a new name now?
I
It
think
was
it's
kind of
called. I
like
think
a terrible
the
name
Wizard of
for it.
OSC is two. Is like
Wizard of
the Wizard of
OSC.
OSC. Yeah. Um. Yeah. Oh, anyway, sorry, it's a super sidebar, but I just
No, that's great.
it's a great one. It's a great one, because it kind of like I've obviously would never leave Touch Designer, but if you're making some like utility, you might be able to just have it in like this kind of program. Um.
Right.
So, right before we get to your set here, I kind of wanted to just talk generally about your most recent events. You had an event with our good friend Matt, Zip Visuals. He has a new event called Transcend Labs in New York. Obviously, your events with, Submersion. You played at Soundhaven. So, just kind of like a general kind of what it feels like to perform at these shows. If you feel like you want to talk about one in specific, like go for it. Just to kind of get your general take on what it is and how it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I'll say, from compared to having to be, VJ1, the coordinator at Submersion, it is nice to do other events where it's just like, I'm being tacked on as, just another VJ where I can just focus on that one thing. So, this year I did a few shows with the Rust Music. Um, and then I went right into going to Sound Haven, and that was great. That was probably my most notable set this year, honestly, all things considered. With Feel
Nice.
at the UFO stage,
Hell
um,
yeah.
and like, and it's kind of funny too because I actually, for whatever reason, we had some issues getting my output, you know, being seen to the wall for whatever reason. So it was actually like 10 minutes of no output for the beginning of the set, and I was kind of freaking out, just like standing there. But the wall techs were amazing. They kept going. They kept trying to fix it,
That's
and
terrible.
they got
That's
my.
good that they fixed it though.
It's good that they fixed it. They were great. These things kind of happen. I totally understand. That's just you got to roll with the punches sometimes. So
100%.
standing there for the first 10 minutes of Feel, just like hand through my hair, just like whew, heavy breathing. This is like because leading up to it, I was like, all right, this is gonna be like my biggest set. This is a big one. Pretty big festival. The stage design's pretty cool. I love how the UFO stage, had those like angled LED panels to where like it actually looked like a UFO. But once I got the output, once they got my output going, it was blast off from there. I was like, all right, let's go, let's lock in. And that's where I really felt like my controller had become something instrumental because I guess it was a mixture of me being really into Feel's music and having done his visuals before, and then just coming to the set prepared in a way where I felt like I could make something great happen. Um, I was just locked in for the rest of it at that moment. It was
Fuck
it was
yeah.
definitely my best set. It just felt great, and just ripping on my controller, knowing exactly where I had to go for what controls, and just looking down, seeing the labels, knowing everything, and just ripping into it. It really felt great, and it was a great festival. Um, you know, had a really great time there. It was
Hell yeah.
that was, cool. And then Zip Show was I wasn't, on the bill or anything. And, Matt and I have always talked, through the years a bit. And he, I was like, I'm coming up for your event, man. This looks awesome. You're putting on this whole thing with these people,
Nice.
wearing mocap stuff and having this interactive stuff. Like, I want to go experience that. And, me being from New York, I live in North Carolina now. I made the 8-hour drive up to New York City. And a couple days before, Matt was like, you know what, why don't you just come and get set up with your TouchOSC controller. So I got there, I set up my laptop, and like it was funny too, like I didn't bring a router with me. I've always just kind of like had my network switch, and like I connected to the venue Wi-Fi, and I guess they had some firewall settings or whatever, and it was actually like blocking OSC. So when I was
No
like testing it,
what? What the
yeah, yeah, it,
the port or
like
something?
it's something, I don't know what it was, but I knew the network was the problem.
Mm-hmm.
So, my laptop was set up on this kind of like loft second floor area. So I set up my iPhone as a mobile hotspot, but like put it on this corner at this like elevated position that was like kind of like looking out to the dance floor. It wasn't obstructed or anything. And I was like, okay, like I think if I put my iPhone here and have, it set as a hotspot connected to my laptop, and then I connect my iPad to the hotspot on my phone, it'll all work. And it did, which was great. So for that event, Matt had an LED wall, and then there were several projectors, all projecting onto the walls of the chocolate factory there in Brooklyn. and I pretty much had synesthesia running out to one of the projectors on the wall, and I stood in the crowd for quite a few hours without looking at my laptop once, and just using the TouchOSC controller to control the visuals, and had some people from the crowd like peak interest and join in, and I hand the controller off to them and show them how to use it. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was great, and Matt got into it too. Like, it was a lot of fun.
Nice. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I was really almost came to that show. I was in Europe for my summer tour, and Matt is a very good friend of mine and collaborator, and we obviously share. The mocap suit is something that we share.
Yeah.
It's from our good friend Martin Stebbing, the master, the OG.
Oh yeah, W.
So he
Yep.
W. Yeah, I was the holder of the suit, but I wasn't really using it as much. So now Matt is the holder of the suit, but we kind of share it. And there was a small chance, maybe possibility of me flying back and forth to Europe, but it was just like too much. Yeah, the truth is, it wasn't
Right.
even a budgetary concern. It was more of just like logistically for me to like fly into New York for 48 hours and fly back to Europe and then go to a festival. It was just like, I don't know if I can actually do that. I'm too old, I think, at this point to be able to do that.
It's physically demanding.
I've done that
Don't blame
before
you.
when I was younger, and it was just like, the I don't do any drugs anymore, so I don't think I would have been able to handle it sober. So so it just didn't happen. But it looked like it was an awesome event, and I really hope that he does it again. It's very difficult to do your own events. So I hope
Right.
that he manages to
He
recoup
put a lot
everything.
into that event, and it was really cool. They had the LED wall on the first floor there
Yeah,
with the mocap dancer in front of it, and then on the second floor was another LED wall, but it had Azure Connect and some touch designer patches that some of
it's
the
awesome.
other artists created, like time visuals.
It's so awesome,
And that was a lot of fun
because
too.
yeah, like what events many events have like interactive elements to them, but very rarely
Right.
is it like a synergy thing of like these are the artists that are VJing and doing the interactive installations, and
Yeah.
then also adding to like the quality of the interactive installations. I don't know. I feel like it's a very unique kind of thing.
Oh yeah. Like I
I mean,
was
was
I
it
was
unique
standing in
enough for
front of
you to
that
want to come
LED
out, right?
wall. Yeah, like I exactly, like I made the 8-hour drive to go up there, and I wanted to attend the show, just because Matt was putting on something really special, and I wanted to see what that looked like. And it was cool that he invited me to be a part of executing all that. It was a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
yeah,
But like, yeah, I was standing in front of that LED wall on the second floor with a controller, working on, just playing with, time visuals, touch designer patch that I had created. And like, I was just having a blast. Like,
hell
forget
yeah,
like VJing for anybody else. Like, I was just, I was enjoying that. That was a good time.
that's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Well, I think we're at the moment now. We're going to jump into your
Yeah,
computer and check out your set, what you have ready for us. So, take it away. Um,
sure.
got
So,
some pretty stuff.
yeah, so like here's Synesthesia on the right hand side, and here's TouchOSC. And like I had mentioned before, getting back into synesthesia, I had this problem to solve of, okay, I really want to be able to control synesthesia, know what I am doing. So I took it upon TouchOSC here and created that. If I press play, it should start. Yeah, there we go. Is this music playing if I play that? Or you just hear my
Um,
microphone?
I do not hear the music, but let's. No, I don't hear it. You might need to change your
Okay.
audio
No,
settings.
no, it's fine. I just wanted to do it just to get like the audio engine, just like doing stuff.
Okay.
Um,
So we'll just Just
Cool.
people that watching know
Yeah,
that
we'll
there's
just keep
audio
rolling
playing in
with
the
it.
background.
Yeah, there's audio playing in the background. So
Cool.
basically, when I had this problem of I hate MIDI mapping in Synesthesia, I don't know what I'm looking at when I change a scene on my MIDI controller. Um, I created this TouchOSC controller, and it actually started out pretty. What was it? Is this the one? No, hold on. Yeah, it like started out like looking as much as ugly as this, to be honest. And like I love TouchOSC and everything like that. I
My gosh, the
just,
difference is striking.
the controls natively in TouchOSC can just look like very basic and such. So I really wanted to create a touch controller that felt responsive. So it was like, how do you do those kinds of things? So like, these buttons isn't just like, one button control. It's like a few of them, and it like stays dark, but like, when the value goes to 1, you get this orange outline and such. So I really wanted to both make it feel responsive, but also replicate it as best as I can to the Synesthesia UI. So like, meta controls, I did my best, like, using all the OSC addresses that are available, and gave them all like lock banks and such, and just like, really tried to replicate that UI. But like if I click on a new scene here, go to Automata, as soon as I trigger a new scene, you get all your labels. And some scenes, this is actually a newer update that I'm working on, but some scenes just may have like a lot of controls and such. So like, if you need that, need something beyond like the base configuration of this controller, you can like turn on extra controls. And there we go. So like here you can see that there's 8 bangs, but in this scene here, Automata, there's clearly a lot more than that. So like I can go over to B1 here and turn this radio down, and now I have like, the next set of them. And then as you can see, as I'm clicking them, it's changing, what's going on in the scene here. But yeah, like I really wanted to just create that instrumental type of controller for synesthesia, because I felt like that's what I've always felt like it should work in that way.
Sick. Not only is it designed nicely, but it also functions really well, which I think is like a really
Thank
important
you.
aspect of it. I remember when you showed, you posted in the MoGraph group, like the audio color analyzer. And my first thing was
This
like,
here.
yeah, it's like, there's no way this is TouchOSC. Like, how did you do that? And
Yeah,
then,
no, and like
it's just great.
yeah, like all of this up here, these are all of the different buckets in synesthesia where the audio analysis like gives you these float values where you can like plug them into your shaders. So like, the shader here if it has audio reactivity, it's using one of these floats
Right,
here
right.
somewhere. um and the audio analysis in the controller is great too, because it's a great way of like knowing like, oh, like if this just stops moving, then like I just lost connectivity from my iPad to my computer. So it works in a few different ways where everything's working right just at a glance. And again, that was just like a big thing that I wanted to solve with synesthesia, is just like knowing what you're doing at a glance and not having to add in those micro calculations of like, what am I doing right now? Where is my MIDI mapping?
Hmm.
And like, to each their own. Like somebody else may not have that problem, but like me
Right.
going into this, I was like, okay, like I want it right here, like give me that data. But yeah, like this controller was just like, you know, something that I felt like I needed to create in order for me to be able to use synesthesia in the way that I wanted it to, or
Mm-hmm.
wanted to use it rather. But like the scene has drop down controls, we can pull up drop downs and we can change those things. So like, in synesthesia you have this OSC button where it'll show you all of the different routes and you can make. So I pretty much spent a good probably like 2 to 3 months just learning TouchOSC and like
Right.
figuring out what the heck anything meant and like how to make things talk to each other. Yeah,
Yeah.
um so it was a lot of that, and then one day I was just like, all right, let's make something look great.
Mm.
And that's where I just went at this controller. Probably like this edit here was probably like when I was like, all right, time to make this look great and release it soon, but it's still buggy and whatever, and not everything works, and I didn't make every menu and whatnot.
This is so
uh,
this is version 2, or is this the new one you're working on?
this is the new one that I'm working on, so this is
Mm-hmm.
version 1.3.
Okay.
And the biggest thing that I've added so far to 1.3 is an extra controls, like how I was saying a little bit earlier. Some scenes just have a lot of controls. It's not
Mm-hmm.
most anesthesia scenes, but some of them do just have like a lot of bangs or a lot of
Right.
toggles or a lot of
Right. 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 Right.
sliders. So my controller for up until now didn't support that. You were limited to maximum 8 here and bangs and 10 toggles and 10 sliders and 8
Mm-hmm.
knobs. But
Mm-hmm.
now I've added these swatches here on the right
So
side
you can go in
where
between.
right. So like here's bangs 1, which is 1 to 8, and then bangs 2 would be 9 to 16. And I've also made it so that like when you're on page 2, everything's blue now. So like more just like without having to think where you are.
Right. 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 I love that.
um but yeah, that as well. And also like I'm trying to oh, that's a bug. I gotta fix that. But when you go to XY mode right now, XY is like in the base like project here without changing anything. You just have a one XY pad. So like I
Mm-hmm.
added this mode where in some synesthesia scenes, like Blurb for instance, this is a great scene, favorite.
Which one is this?
Some of the this
Blurb.
is Blurb off the Synesthesia Marketplace by
Nice.
Flexi.
I just gotta. I
And like
gotta.
this is a
I gotta. There's a like a Black Friday deal going on right now. I gotta check it out because I gotta get some
yeah,
new stuff.
yeah, there's lots of good goodies. I think it's like 20% off marketplace scenes or something
Yeah.
like that. um but yeah, like Blurb for instance has like a lot of XY controls. So like in the base controls here you just have one XY where you can like change between them. But like in XY mode I can't really show it because I'm using my mouse right now on the computer. But like you can control, like say for instance you have a thumb here and a thumb here, you can control two XYs at a time to like
Mm,
change the visual.
that's awesome.
So that's why I added that. But I'm going to overhaul this to be more customizable and extra controls here. I actually added a XYR and XYL, and you can actually now drag them to wherever you want.
That's sick. Does it just dock or it
Yeah.
just floats?
What do you mean?
It's floating, right? It's not like docking into the actual thing.
So like if I close it out like this, yeah, it will move. Um, so like you can kind of like move it, and then like it'll stay saved there. So like
That's
next time you use
awesome.
it, it'll stay like that. So like
That is super
because some
nice.
controls where you may want to use an XY, but you need to use like the 8th or 9th bang here. So like
Right.
you just move this over just by dragging this, and
That's awesome.
just have that available to you.
That's super awesome.
But now I think I'm gonna make it so XY mode, you can have like all the bangs or something, or 20
Right.
sliders
Right. Right.
all
Right.
at
Right. Right.
once.
Right. Yeah, you want to make
So
it as configurable as possible because everybody's going to have like
right,
a different way of wanting it
exactly. Everybody has their own like way of
connecting to
using
it.
it, or how
Yeah.
the way they want to have their controls set up. So
Yeah.
giving that available to everybody, I think is going to be a pretty well received update for
Definitely.
this, for sure.
Definitely. That's awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, it's all limited to what Synesthesia can, I guess, output with OSC right now. Like, um, not everything's available. Like, up here, I may not have anything named right now, but like if I name these to, certain presets in the fave slots, um, these aren't actually available to be like outputted as like a name text value. So like, you don't have that for like fave slots and such.
Gotcha. You just have
But
to know, but it's still, at least you can still switch between them.
right.
It's kind of
It's
nice.
I pretty much use like every available OSC feature in Synesthesia to create this, but yeah, it's been
And I guess
it's
also
been a good
having a
project.
connection with the crew is gonna, or the team, I should say, is gonna also allow you to be, more connected
Right.
to what's going on.
Right, or even just like it's been nice to, I guess, make suggestions and such to the software that, and then eventually seeing those things get added. Um, but yeah, Synesthesia is probably my favorite app. I really enjoy the idea of programming shaders. It feels like this is, you're almost creating like a little game. You have this output image and you create these controls that change what's going on in the actual scene itself. And I really just have I guess really stuck closely to that idea the most out of like every other medium I've tried. Like how I said earlier, I was doing After Effects and whatnot, but just like feeling like I was plateauing myself in some way because it wasn't like real time. Um, so I guess combining both like creating the real time visual itself that has those controls, and then creating a controller in itself that is able to handle those controls like in a very meaningful way has been pretty successful.
Nice. Cool. What else? What else are
Yeah.
you gonna show us?
Sure. So I guess I'll go into like, how, this is probably my best selling synesthesia scene, Fool's Chain, which is like, just GLSL chains. Like I really wanted to create this aesthetic, this chain aesthetic. Because I feel like that just, didn't exist on the synesthesia marketplace or anything. And it was just like, sometimes in the past I've seen like a visual of like a chain or something, and I thought it was just really cool. And it started off as like an exercise, like how can I animate like an actual, like, I guess, thing that exists in this world, this material world. So I think it started off like this where I just like added a bunch of chains, and then I was like, okay, now this is like running and not great. So I think I like added them all individually, but the
I kind of like
way
this aesthetic
this
though,
one
like
works,
the cell shaded kind of like almost.
yeah,
Yeah, it's like it's definitely different, but it's I don't know, there's something
yeah,
about it. It's like kind of interesting, almost like a motion graphic cartoony kind of thing.
right, like plasticky,
Plasticky, yeah, yeah,
plasticky
yeah,
looking.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But this is V2 of it right now. But basically, the scene is pretty simple. Let me see. Just making sure nothing's moving here. If I comment out a couple lines here, it'll show what it's like. Not here. Oh, it's loading. There we go. So like here's just a single chains before they're repeated a bunch. So it's just 3 chains. But then if we take it down even further, comment this out. Pull strength. Wait, this one here. Oh, there they go. But that's all this like scene is really made up of. And then they're all just kind of like repeated. I think I made it so that they still pull. But yeah. That's all this scene is really made up of.
Nice.
It's just the 6 link SDFs.
Nice.
And then put those back in. You get chains. Just
Sweet.
6 links, all repeated.
It's awesome.
But yeah, this is probably my favorite scene that I put out. Because it just like really hits that aesthetic, you know?
Yeah.
I just added a V2, so you know, if you own it already and haven't gone to the marketplace recently, there's an update for it where I've added a couple of controls and such.
Nice. I'd love to see like, you know, maybe some TouchOSC Lua magic or even GLSL magic. Anything you want to kind of like share a little bit how the sauce is made. I know some of it is probably going to be secretive and that's cool, but anything you want to kind of share would be cool.
So like my synesthesia scenes, like, you know, like I said before, like I'm not a programmer by any means. I didn't get formally educated in a lot of this, and like it was after the synesthesia like OSC update came another update for synesthesia, and it pretty much brought in, let me pull it up. Hold on. It made it so that the Lygia shader library and the like HG like SDF shader library were both like available to use in synesthesia, like copyright free and everything. Like, you know, you can use it, you know, as you want and all that. So basically, you know, you have this entire shader library where it has a lot of these functions that you would previously have to like write yourself entirely, or like find like from Shader Toy or wherever and implement into your shader. These were just like, you know, became available as their own functions in synesthesia. So like in here, like PMod 1 and everything is like available from like HG SDF. Where's PMod? Here we go. PMod 1. So like this repeating function is like available right here in, you know, HG SDF, and like you can also like find a lot of these operators in like RayTK and things like that. And that's honestly like where I guess first started to get interested about ray marching, or like really tried to understand it first
from
was like
RayTK.
through RayTK. Yeah, through RayTK, and like trying to just like, you know, through my touch designer learning process and all of that was like, all right, now let me try RayTK and whatnot. And I actually did like a workshop that like Tech provided, and it was great. And I learned a lot about just like, you know, how the ray march is set up and everything, and how these different functions may talk to each other. And then I, you know, was doing a little bit of that in touch designer, and then eventually was like, all right, let me just try that in synesthesia. And then that like update came where, you know, Lygia and HDSCF were available in synesthesia, and I was like, oh wow, like a lot of those same operators and everything are available in synesthesia. Like I can apply those same things in here that you can find in RayTK. So that's like,
Sick.
here's like, I didn't, make these link SDFs myself or
Right.
anything. That's
You
just like,
found them
a
in the library.
Lygia function.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, I'm not working with nodes here. And it's just like trying to figure out how to make functions work with each other from somebody who doesn't or hasn't been formally educated in programming. But these things being available makes it a lot easier for somebody like myself to, get into it. Like, I think this PBR function, let me go to this new one that I was working on last night. Like this,
Taurus.
yeah, nice little inverted torus action.
Ooh, cool.
Yeah, early stages of scene, but like there's this PBR function that from Lygia that's pretty much like the where is it? It's pretty much like a one-to-one to like how the like Blender PBR like node works, which is pretty cool to see just like in GLSL code and like being able to apply that to shaders. And like I don't have to understand how like I guess a lot of it works on the back end and whatnot because the function's just available, and it's just like it'd be a whole other thing like writing my own PBR function,
Yeah, and why would you if it already exists, right?
Right, exactly. And it wouldn't be like anything different from, using it in a program where that stuff is available as
Yeah.
some type of operator or function. But yeah, this is the last scene I just released on the Synesthesia marketplace too. Use the OSC controller because why not, right? Oh, can't make it any bigger. But yeah, like I just trying to learn GLSL as much as I can. It's a black magic, like we've mentioned before. I still don't really understand a lot of it, but it sure feels satisfying when I do get to like figure things out that I may not have like understood prior. Um, yeah, there's certainly a satisfying feeling of creating a shader and then being able to use it on this type of controller where anything I make in the shader is going to dynamically be available on this controller. So it's like, all right, I can make things and make them ready to rip and just add controls and know exactly what I'm looking at, like right then and there as I'm coding it and adding controls and then testing out the control as I'm coding it,
Yeah, being able to do that all in real time is very powerful, right? I mean, it's kind of like the beauty of real time,
Yeah.
which I definitely want to talk about a little bit in our second portion. Kind of like the differences between the two.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, this is awesome. Thank you so
Yeah,
much
that's
for
my
showing all
latest
this
scene.
stuff.
Bit sinew.
Dive into it. Let's dive into it a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So the shape here in the middle is actually, turn this down, pull the code, do a little courtesy zooming here for our viewers. So this here is really just two shapes here in the middle, two SDFs. We have a box and a, wait, hold on. We have a box and an octahedron. And then inside these two shapes, well, first off, these two shapes, if you've used RayTK, you're probably familiar with the stair union. And that's what these two shapes are doing to each other. And they're both, colored different colors. And that's why you see the orange here and the screen here. But inside of this stair union here, I put a sphere in the middle and then did a difference round with the sphere to create this, I guess, hollowed look inside of this SDF. And that's what I really love the most about this scene, probably. It's just that, like, you got these weird stringy things where you can like peek inside and what's going on, and then you can like expand it.
Sick.
Yeah.
It reminds me a little bit of there was a shader toy scene that you converted successfully. This is obviously like much more of your style aesthetic.
Yeah.
But do you remember that scene? That I don't remember which one it was, but there was one because I took it and I made it for Touch Designer
it's
as well.
probably M range, and shout out to M range here. Like a lot of like some of the shaders that I play live are from shader toy artists where I look for the appropriate license where it's hey you can use this and whatnot, and try to honor that because that is important to the artists themselves. But huge shout out to M range. I think it's this shader here. Let's self-reflect. Yeah, this is a fun one. Which
and
just has
you inspired me to like to figure out how to get into Touch Designer, because it's like it's there's such like a formatting thing when it goes from shader toy to another GLSL component.
Right.
But once you get it,
like
it's very satisfying.
Like uniforms changing and such.
Definitely.
And having to make sure all those get converted over correctly. Like there's even still like some bugs in trying to convert some shader toys where like they may have like a built-in like audio file or something where they that might not import correctly in Synesthesia and whatnot. There's just a lot to it, but once you get it imported correctly and it works, it feels good. But yeah, this one's a lot of fun. Like turning the sphere on where it just has like this
damn.
Is it refraction? I think it's refraction.
Yeah. I guess it is a refraction. Yeah, you're right. Refraction, not reflection.
Yeah. But yeah, this one's a lot of fun. I remember at the UFO stage for Soundhaven, I like had this off at first and it looked like Feel was just inside of this this geode thing. But yeah, like there's some other like this one too is a lot of fun. This is another M range shader off a shader toy. Well, let me pull up. I'll also pull up the original.
Yeah, please do. I'd love to see like your process of converting. Like is it just simple as just copy pasting into ChatGPT, or are you doing a little bit more?
Well, not everything I do is just like through ChatGPT. A lot of like the shader toys that I will import, I kind of like am just like reading the code and trying to make an understanding of what's going on, because I feel like a lot of my learning process has been through just like kind of reverse engineering how things work and such. Kind of like this original controller, this was actually like sent to me by Kyle Meredith, and he was like, yeah, like this works and such, and synesthesia where like you can do whatever with OSC, and it was very basic and everything, but like I took this project file and I was like, okay, like here's slider 3, like how does this work? Okay, it's sending this OSC message, controls global slider 3, like what does that mean? What does X mean? I don't even know what that means. What is X? Oh, it's the value I'm sending. And like just like reverse engineered my way through that and then ended up with this controller. And I guess a lot of that was I also do with the shaders I find. So like I'll go in here and hold on, let me pull up the original of this one. Got on my other monitor, just sifting through the pages. Shader toy loads very slowly.
Yeah, especially because we're using your
oh yeah, we're using Synesthesia, we're using everything right now. Hold on,
yeah, no, but the stream also helps.
Actually, I have another one that works. Hello,
I'm here.
Yeah, do that. No, sorry, I was talking to the shader, not you.
Oh.
I was like, oh yeah, this I remember now. I pretty much like will craft shaders on my desktop and then port them to my laptop, and any other final things that I change I will do on my laptop, but some of them were a little wonky on my desktop. But yeah, like here's a shader from mRange that I really loved. It's called Hex Marching, and like here's what it looks like originally. So like I imported this into Synesthesia, and then I was like, all right, like there's a lot of colors going on, and maybe like kind of like bring in like some more black so that like it works better with like an LED wall or something, and try and bring those like colors down. So I ended up with this here, and a lot of that was just like me not being a formally educated programmer, shader artist, or anything, just like going through the code and like, all right, let me change this value. I'll change that from 3 to 1. And what are we going to get? Okay, it's black output. That's horrible. Oh, wait, it's probably because this. Yeah, that. My bad. It's not made that great on my desktop. But like if I change the value here, it's going to like change the colors. Maybe not that one. Nope. But yeah, now that like we have colors changing, so like a lot of trying to figure out how shaders work is just like trying to change some values around and seeing what works and what looks good. But yeah, that's like this shader here, Hex Marching. Once again, big shout out to mRange.
Shout out to mRange.
Yeah,
It's also awesome that they
this scene
provides it with
yeah
such
no
a
it's great
creative
that
common
they
license.
exactly like they're just like I'm pretty sure like 99% of their shaders or whatever just like license CC0, like here you go, have fun, like use it.
Right.
um which is just awesome, and I love taking their shaders. I really like their style. I think it fits really well into what I would see as just like a fun thing in a visual set, and making them synesthesia ready and controlling them on my controller. It's a lot of fun.
Sick.
There's another one. This one's Saturday hacking. Yeah, this one is pretty fun to open with. I like opened with it a bunch of times this year, and just like starting off as like these little balls and whatnot, and then like slowly like making them starting to connect and everything. And then like work like at Submersion, I like worked with like the LDs and such. I was like, hey, I'm gonna like before my set, I like pulled them over to my my computer. I was like, I'm gonna open with this visual, and like when the bass drops or whatever, like these lines are gonna start connecting, and I want to see like lasers, point single beams or whatever. And it was just like I feel like creating a good visual set also comes with just like being able to have that kind of communication at front of house when
Mm-hmm.
things are going on, and so many different teams that make up the whole visual spectacle are working
Mm-hmm.
together. I feel like being able to have that communication between each other is really important.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Totally. Super important.
Yeah. But yeah, this is a fun scene to open with, and just like have like a simple, just like kind of looks like a simple visual to begin with, and then like slowly like work my way up through the visual set.
Yeah, I think that's like a good a good rule of thumb with visuals is like, at least for me, it's like, you start out with something and then you change it, whether it's you start out with like a
Right.
2D or like, lines, and then all of a sudden they become like circular or more detailed or, 3D. I think it's always like a good way of
Right.
kind of like pushing, creates a lot of interest, but also just pushes things in an interesting way.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just like I enjoy so much like getting out of I enjoy just having that collaboration when it
Mm-hmm.
comes time to like, execute the time of the festival or something,
Right.
and just
Right.
like, you know, we can talk all year about, what we want to do for it or whatnot, or how it's going to run. But, nothing really matters until like it really all just kind of happens in the moment. And
Mm-hmm.
like being able to execute things, and like, for at Submersion, for instance, like, it was really cool kind of thing that happened. It was like 4 a.m. I get a call, and it's like, hey, we have a drone pilot. Can we get a drone feed up on the LED wall for the sunrise
Right.
set? And it's me, 4:15 in the morning after a weekend full of changeovers and just being that VJ1 to everybody. And I'm like, don't worry about it. We got this. And then like I went to the drone pilot. He shows me how he has it set up. Shout out Jeremy. Love that guy after everything's said and done. But anyway, um, I go to him. I'm like, all right, how do you have this set up? He's got his like FPV goggles, but everything's truly running out of his iPhone. So I'm like, all right, go to your iPhone, get NDI capture, go to the App Store, get that, download it, meet me at front of house when you get that ready. Did that, came to me. I like set up um I had like my desktop set up that was like doing like a separate mapping to like the submersion sign that we had in the water. And then my laptop was simultaneously like kind of like being the output for the last two VJs who both didn't have Resolume Arena, so they had to output to me so that I could
Mm-hmm.
do the advanced output for them.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like using both of my computers already in that moment, and like set up this little miniature router. Uh, after I found out I was using an iPhone, I was like, all right, let me set up this router that I brought, plug that in, had him connect to that to the router from his iPhone, and then connected my desktop to the router,
Oh my
and then like
gosh.
brought in the NDI capture to my desktop to test it while the the VJs using my laptop were like uninterrupted, and I wasn't like testing anything on there, so I didn't want to mess up the final output. Um, got it working on my desktop, and then like sent it to my laptop for the last set, which it was just a lot of fun. Hold on, I'll pull up a video here. Uh, and just kind of show a couple moments, but like it was really fun because we didn't do any effects or anything over the drone feed or whatnot, and it was
Mm-hmm.
just like trying to capture like just the sunrise and just like the lake view, because you remember at the beach stage, it was right on the lake.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. um he was wearing the FPV goggles, and I was standing, beside him, and like kind of telling him, where to go for like big moment shots, or like, what's being cut out or not in the, video, because, this isn't like a 16 by 9 aspect ratio from the wall.
Mm.
So like
Mm.
to like let him know like all that. But it was a lot of fun making that happen. Go. And there was like a point where we had to do like a battery changeover. So like you can see like his drone is like, all right, I
Ah,
gotta change batteries. So like I switched
it
to
goes
like
down.
just the regular like, yeah, I just switched to the regular PTZ cams that we had, and I was like, all right. And then like we switched the batteries on the drone, and like got that back up, and then like brought that back in
Sick.
here.
Sick. Super effective, I guess, for a sunrise as well. It's like really nice, get to see all this like really nice colors
Yeah,
and
yeah,
everything.
it was really fun to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
It was like we weren't really planning on doing it. We had all these cameras and such set up. Several PTZ cameras. Shout out Assorted Studios for bringing all that on, and the LED wall. But yeah, they set me up with all these PTZ cams, and I had a joystick at front of house, and a monitor with all the different cameras.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lot of fun doing that. Um, but then we brought the drone into the mix, and like created moments like this where like here's a submersion sign in the water.
Mm.
um bringing up at that on the wall, as like some of the last visuals for the weekend.
Yeah, it's
And
exciting
then
for
like
sure.
I'm standing next to the drone pilot. I'm like, oh, like there's a bunch of fog rolling off the lake, like that would look great, and get that in the shot.
Nice.
um yeah, it was a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun making that happen, and just like it was really funny too. The drone pilot, he'd never done this, anything like this before, where his output of what he's seeing is going out, to a crowd who's watching all that he's
Mm-hmm.
doing right there during an Alex Perez set. So I went up to him and I was like, "Hey man, like, we're gonna make this work. It's gonna be cool. Like, do you VJ at all?" And he was like, "No, like, but I really want to get into it." And I was like, "Well, you're about to do your first VJ set."
That's awesome. That's
And I just
awesome.
like hyped him up about it, and he was like just smiling big. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Just being like,
I love it.
last set of the weekend, it's the end of the weekend, whatever. Like we'll try new things, whatever. It was a lot of fun.
Sweet. That's really cool. Awesome. Is there anything else you wanted to share with us in this segment? If you want to show us or showcase
Uh,
us?
I guess like I'll go back into the TouchOSC controller a little bit here. So I do have a YouTube tutorial on this TouchOSC controller, but
Mm-hmm.
the tutorial was V1. A lot of stuff has been added since then. Um, Most notably, we have a color picker here where you can like actually pick like
Nice.
through like a color wheel. I actually helped Keith Fractal Visions get this going for his TouchOSC.
Nice. Yeah,
Um,
I took it for mine as well.
oh hell yeah, nice. Yeah, dude, it was such a great find. I think there was like several months where like I would just type into Google search, I'm like TouchOSC color
Color
picker,
picker.
and like, looking for it, and then one day this
Yeah.
popped up. I was like, oh, there it is.
That's so
Um,
funny.
so yeah, like I added that. I added like, I remember doing a show in like April, and like I kept looking at like, what time it is or whatever, how much time I have left.
Right.
And I remember looking over to my left to the LD who had like this timer or clock of just like, it was right there in front of his face. I was like, that's so useful. So in that moment, I was like, all right, let me add this timer. So like, you start your set, you tap this timer, and you can kind of just like visually keep track of like, how deep you're into it yet, so you don't cook through all your content or something like that, and just like checking on your pace. It helps me a lot for sure. But yeah,
Nice.
this is pretty much my big thing to share. This controller. Uh, It'll be this next update will be probably be coming out in however many weeks, but yeah, it's trying to make it a lot more customizable, especially in here in this mode here. In the future, you'll be able to, add what kind of buttons you want, what you want down here, sliders, whatever, toggles. You want an XY, you don't want one, you want all sliders. Who cares? You'll be able
Mm-hmm.
to do it. I want to make that
Nice.
available to people. But yeah, that's that's definitely my big thing here to share.
Hell yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. It's
Of course.
always great to see people's workflows and processes. Um, and, we're going to get into the second portion here. Totally huge shift in conversation. You mentioned you have a daughter.
Yeah.
We've had a bunch of conversations about kids and, what it is to be a dad.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear from you, like, your daughter's much older than my son, but like, do you show her visuals? Do you kind of like get her interested in art and things like that? It's kind of interesting how you said that you didn't have anybody in your family to emulate in terms of art, but now you have somebody who you can provide that emulation for. What's that been like? How has that experience been like for you?
Yeah. So I will say, I became a dad at 25 years old. It's
Young
been a
man.
life-changing experience. I know, right? Incredible. She's 4 years old now, and it's interesting because like eventually one day, I apologize to forget how old your son is exactly, but
He's
one
almost
day you
two.
just start, he's almost 2. Okay, so you got a little bit of time before you just start getting into conversations with
Yeah.
your child,
Yeah.
and they start having questions after that. And it's just incredible that these little beings become these self-conscious like little machines that are just digesting all this information in front of them, and they may not understand anything about it, but like it's really nice to be able to grow up again, but through my daughter. um and I do show her visuals a bit. I do have her,
Nice.
I'll be like, oh, Audrey, like, here's a video of daddy doing visuals.
Does she
She
get
may
it?
not. She like kind of gets it. Like I showed her a video and she's like, "Is that you, daddy?" I'm like, "Oh no,
Mm.
that's Feel on stage." She's like, "Is that your friend?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's my friend." Like, and then I'll show her like Synesthesia with the controllers and she's like,
Mhm.
"Can you make it pink?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can make it pink." And like she's like, "Wow, that looks so great." And it's really cute. She doesn't like fully, get the capacity of that, of course, just being a 4-year-old, but she's like,
Right.
wow, like, daddy makes colors on the wall.
That's awesome.
um yeah, no, it's really great, and it keeps me grounded, and being able to uh find that balance between you know, being a father and also working a full-time job, but also trying to apply myself as an artist has
Mhm.
certainly been a challenge, but it's something that, you know, I'm sure we all work at each day, um, get a little bit better at. And that's been really where I've been at for the last, I guess, 2 years or so. Is really, all right. I'm a dad now. I'm doing my thing, but what else can I do?
Right.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, being a single father is definitely something that I don't have much experience with. I don't think I'd be able to do anything without my wife.
Yeah.
I yeah, I mean, it's like, pretty crazy to think, but I've just been starting to. I got like a mini projector, like a $60 projector on Amazon, and like
Nice.
before his bedtime, I kind of sometimes will project onto his wall. Like some
Yeah.
kind of trying to relax him without stimulating him too much.
Yeah.
Um, but he loves it. Yeah, I've been thinking of like different ways that I can make it interactive for him so he could play with it. Like add like a
Right. Oh
sensor
man.
or like make some sort of like
Yeah.
feedback with the camera or something. Because I showed him like a few times. I showed him like AI. Like I have him, excuse me, sit on my lap and like show him like the
Right.
AI of the camera feed, and he's that like
Yeah.
is interesting to him because he can kind of put it together. Like that it's him in some like weird
Right.
thing.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. I've definitely had me and my daughter in front of a Azure Connect before.
yeah, they love it. It's like
It's
really
certainly,
exciting for
it's
them.
great. Like just jumping around in front of it, and like it's funny too. Like my daughter, she really wanted to go to Chuck E. Cheese recently. And I was like, all right, like let's go to Chuck E. Cheese. I haven't been there
Mhm.
since I was asking to go to Chuck E. Cheese. And it's just children's rat casino with pizza. So we went there and it was great. And then like there was this LED floor panel
Oh
thing
wow, that's
going
cool.
on. Yeah, and it was interesting because I was like, oh wow, like somebody made a patch for this where
Yeah,
you dance on the floor to move around the Chuck E. Cheese heads and
that's
collect the
awesome.
whatever coins or pizza on the floor. It was funny and a little interactive thing, but yeah, I
That's
was like, oh
awesome.
wow, there it is. Yeah, like, and like seeing that kind of stuff at children's museums too,
Yeah,
or like I take her to this place called Happy Feet Planet where like they have a projector and like you can throw like these plastic balls at the screen to like play the game and
nice.
things like that.
That's cool.
So it's cool to see that kind of stuff get translated into kids things.
Totally, totally,
Yeah.
totally. I mean, like kids are definitely like one of the best um, testers, I guess I should say, of something if it's like cool and interactive, because they're
Yeah.
so you like an interactive thing. You want it to be like extremely intuitive, right? Like that. There's no kind of like bar of entry. You want it to just kind of work. So I think it's
Right.
really, a kid is like somebody who's gonna really just like jump into it and not really think about it too much. They're just gonna like try it out.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we kind of touched about it a little bit, but I want to just bring it back around as well. You know, playing at bigger festivals. You know, do you realize like the importance of it, or like, you know, kind of the trajectory of like where your career has taken you from somebody who kind of like, you know, went to shows and then now is part of shows. You know, you did kind of talk about it a little bit at the beginning and kind of like, you know, in the middle, but just a little bit like esoterically, or a little bit kind of like, you know, more emotionally, like what does that feel like, you know? Because it is something pretty crazy to have your name on a flyer and to see your,
Yeah.
you know, your visuals up there in front of so many people, and you know, be alongside your quote unquote heroes, you know,
Right.
as a peer, as somebody on their level, that you're with them there. um you know, do you stop and think about that? Do you reflect on it a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. I reflect on that. You know, it really, you know, I really felt it this year, especially. Um, you know, like it's probably Soundhaven was probably that big moment for me. Just being able to, or not even being able to, but just like being invited to come play a festival was a pretty big deal to me this year. And you know, being asked to do that, you know, for Feel Set, it was really just, it was a very accomplishing, you know, type of feeling where
Mm,
it just like, you know, I was an attendee for a lot of these things. I'd always been inspired by these things. You know, my friends and whatnot have, you know, moved up in those kinds of roles, whether they're either a musician or a VJ. And, you know, I've always kind of like, you know, wanted to also do that. So to be able to put in the work, um, you know, to have something where it was unique to me as a VJ, um, it really felt good to finally like showcase that in a larger festival.
mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, like it's really, it's been pretty surreal. Like, you know, it kind of just makes you think also, like, you know, we're all just people doing a thing who want to like make awesome events and such happen all the time.
For sure.
You know, everybody's just people at the end of the day. um but it's been really special to be on those teams, you know, especially with Submersion, being able to have input on certain things and see those changes happen, has been really just, you know, beneficial to, you know, me and the VJ team. And yeah, like it feels surreal. And, you know, like I said, I don't do this full time, so like it's almost like I'm living this this Batman lifestyle where, you know, most of the day I'm just Bruce Wayne or whatever, but then, you know, I can come out and like do Batman things.
Do you want to do it full time? Like, do you feel like that you would be able to transition to do it full time?
You know, it's a pretty good question. Like I would certainly love to do all of that full time, as long as that, you know, is able to sustain uh being a single dad in this crazy time right now. Um, because, you know, the bills just kind of get more and more expensive. But IT support has been good to me. But obviously, like doing what you love is truly the end game. So like, hey, if there's anyone out there needing somebody, yeah, like I would love to eventually, like, you know, do this full time. That's
Hmm.
certainly the end result.
I
Yeah.
think you will. You're pretty young. You know, you have a long future ahead of you. And like you said
Yeah, and
earlier, you know, you want to be able to pick the things that you want to do and not be forced to do it. Um,
right.
so I think that you're almost in a position where you're almost lucky in a way that you don't have to, be forced to
Right.
do anything.
Yeah, because I'm sure a lot of people know this. Like going places weekend after weekend. It can it can just be a lot physically, and when you're
Totally.
a single dad on top of that, it just adds more into the mix. So
Definitely.
yeah, I am grateful to be able to pick and choose the things that I want to do as an artist, at least.
Hmm.
um yeah.
Nice. Um, okay. Lastly, I kind of wanted to talk to you. Well, two more things. One is, and I guess we also kind of talked about it as well, but just to kind of bring it in a little bit broader, real time versus rendered content.
Yeah.
Especially since you started in the kind of the rendered world of After Effects and motion graphics, in this kind of like world of waiting to render. Um, yeah, what can you tell us a little bit about the power of real time, where it excels, where it kind of generates for you the excitement and
Yeah.
the power of it.
Yeah, so like I felt like, getting into visuals, um I always wanted to be able to control, every aspect of what's going on right there in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like, I couldn't really reach that with pre-rendered content.
Mm-hmm.
So getting into pre-rendered content, creating all these clips, and then like just feeling like I've plateaued myself to where like I've created some cool looks or whatever, but like I kind of just, it doesn't really move to the music, that I want it to. Um, and just discovering synesthesia really kind of opened up a lot of doors of, the possibilities that you can do with real-time rendering and just shader art in general. Um, so really like just real-time visuals are just something that I see as like, it's not the permanent solution to visuals, but it's
Mm-hmm.
certainly something where, it allows you to make the visuals feel, I guess, less technical when you're doing it and more
Mm-hmm.
instrumental when you're doing it. Whereas
Mm-hmm.
like, as you're preparing the shader itself, of course, all of that is technical, but
Right.
I can build that, back end of it, before the show or something, or as I'm building the shader. And just like I really get a satisfaction of, creating a set of controls for a shader where, I feel like I can dance through visuals to the music as I'm VJing to it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you did you feel like a big difference between being a technical artist versus a visual artist? Like, do you feel like that's a different role, or do you merge them into the same thing?
So, when you say like a technical artist, like you mean my, like, I guess just me having more of a technical background?
I mean, like, kind of like what you were saying, where you're kind of making scenes and you're engineering scenes to be able to be controlled, or
Right.
you're making a TouchOSC patch and you're thinking with like a
Yeah.
different type of hat. Sitting in a 3D
Yeah.
software and
So
making something look pretty is different than
it's
programming a 3D
100%
scene. You know
different.
what I mean?
It's 100% different, and I feel like as many times as I've tried to just sit there and make a pretty picture, that I can't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to like me being able to create a problem that I have to solve in a
Right.
creative setting, like
It's
I
kind of,
thrive off of problems.
yeah,
And just
yeah.
being able to solve that and find like, being able to make, the cogwheels turn in a way where it's, I have to take this route that I may not have done before, or may have, used parts of some protocol or something to make that happen in the past, and then like applying what I've learned in the past to this new thing. um, I really take a very big enjoyment out of that. So yeah, like designing the visual itself, almost as if it's its own little program, is like certainly what I've always been trying to do here when making
Awesome.
shaders.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like there's a big difference, and the hats that you wear are different as well. Um,
Right.
okay, so kind of winding down here to the end. Last but not least, Nero Studio. You are a
Yeah.
partner of Nero Studio. I used to be a partner of Nero Studio. We're not going to talk about that.
Yeah.
What is your, tell us a little bit about Nero Studio and your role in Nero Studio, and we can kind of lead off
Yeah.
with that.
Absolutely. So I'll say that, like before when I said that, I was trying to, I took a break from creating art and everything. In 2022, I started to get back into, art, but taking a different approach.
Mm-hmm.
Stuart from Neuro Studio reached out to me and, kind of told me about this thing that they were doing. And this was, very, very early stages of Neuro Studio. And I was like, oh, wow, like, this sounds great. This is a community of other,
Like-minded.
people my age, yeah, like-minded people my age who are getting into art and wanting to, make something out of it, who are also a part of this, pretty niche kind of music scene. So it was a really great, um, it was very welcoming kind of reintroduction to, getting back to art
Mm-hmm.
and just seeing all these other people, trying to do the same thing that I'm doing. Um, and yeah, like I started out just there, just like, this thing was starting to become, you know, a thing that people were creating. It's this cooperative of artists. Um, so yeah, I just started out with them in 2022 and kind of, have been involved in a couple of things here and there and helped them get a booth to Submersion last year and, one of their riders out to Submersion this year. And it's been really cool to be able to have that platform of artists where like, like VJ Union Global, like on
Mm-hmm.
Facebook, is just like,
Mm-hmm.
it's a big group of people. There's thousands and thousands of people in there, and they're all like, in different parts of the spectrum of the,
Right.
electronic music scene, where like there's not as many like paths crossing, I guess, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
there are, but it wasn't something that I saw.
Right.
So to have that alternative where it's a lot of the same people in kind of the same music scene, and also just trying to make art for the same reasons, but also have these different, routes that they take with their art. It was really cool and beneficial to be able to be exposed to that.
Hmm.
Um,
Interesting.
yeah,
Interesting. Yeah, Neuro Studio is a really interesting topic. I've tried to get Stuart and his name escapes me now. I think is his name Tyler as well.
Ryan,
What was it? Ryan.
Ryan,
Ryan.
yeah,
Yeah,
Ryan,
Stuart and Ryan. I always forget because you're Tyler Rhino and he's Ryan.
yeah.
Somehow mixed in my head. Um, but yeah, just haven't been able to get them on. Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Tyler,
Yeah,
for being on here. I really appreciate it. I really love your art and watching you kind of grow from year to year and from month to month. And I'm a big fan, and I really appreciate what you do. And I appreciate you bringing me to Submersion last year. I hope I'll have a chance
yeah,
to
of
come again
course.
at some point, and I hope our paths cross again. Anything you want to
Yeah.
share with us before we leave?
No, I mean, thank you so much for having me here. If you're interested in any of the scenes I've created, you can download them or purchase them on the Synesthesia marketplace.
We'll
But
have a link for that.
yeah, sweet. Yeah. But yeah, thanks for having me here. It's been great talking about kind of where I started and, me just not being somebody who has I didn't go to a 4-year school to learn art or anything or creative programming and things like that. So uh, I really hope that a lot of people can take from this that, you know, you don't have to be formally educated and many of these things to be able to, you know, get it done and learn it yourself. So it's been fun going on that journey, and I'm happy to share it here with you. So thank you.
Wow, what an episode. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to Manda Smash for the intro and outro music. Thank you to Sophie Holder for the amazing internship helping us with all the episodes. And thank you to the guests for coming on and spending time with us. See you next week.